Welcome. This is the Enlightenment Podcast, part of the Authors on Air Global Radio Network. And I'm your host, Laurie Schoenfeld. Thank you for all of those who are listening in today. I am so thrilled to introduce to you our guest, author DP LYLE, who has a new book released, The OC, which is book 5 in the Jake Longley series. Welcome, DP. So happy to have you here.
Thanks, Laurie. I appreciate it. Appreciate you having me.
Absolutely. Let's dive in, shall we?
That's it.
This is it. Can you tell our listeners what the OC is all about?
Well, it's the 5th in the series, my Jake Longley series. And those people that aren't familiar with Jake is, to coin a phrase, an idiot. And that's why they're kind of comedic as opposed to my earlier stuff, which was darker thrillers. Jake is an ex-professional baseball player who owns a bar restaurant on the sand in Gulf Shores, Alabama, and his ambition in life is to do nothing. He made some money playing baseball. He's got his restaurant. He has a manager that runs it. All he's got to do is hang out, drink beer, and chase bikinis. That's his life goal. His father, Ray, is an ex-military. Nobody really knows what Ray did. Something in the spook world, the black ops world, nobody really knows. And Ray's serious. He's a serious private investigator. He can't understand why Jake won't work for him and why Jake doesn't want a real job. And Jake thinks, I've got a real job. This is what I do. So that dynamic goes through the whole thing. And in each series, obviously, there's crimes, there's deaths, there's investigations, and they're all of that. But I call Jake a reluctant PI. He seems to get dragged into Ray's world over and over, kicking and screaming. And then when he gets there, he's not very good at it. But he manages to have his moments, and he manages to muddle through and solve the problem at the end of the day.
Mm-hmm. Jake is very humorous. From the very first page, I found myself snickering just on the voice, but also the internal dialogue that he brought in. Do you appreciate humor, DP?
Absolutely. I grew up with it. I grew up in the South, and everybody can tell a joke and spin a yarn and do all that. And I came from a funny family. I mean, everybody in my family could tell a joke. And everybody I knew could tell a joke, and everybody could tell funny stories and anecdotes. And any story revolved around humor. And I personally find humor in everything. I think everything's funny. As a for 50 years, I think doctors and nurses and cops have a lot in common, that dark gallows humor, because you're there on the job and there are horrific things going on and very stressful, very tense things going on. But it was funny. I mean, you had to be there, and that's why you don't talk about these things at civilian cocktail parties, because they look at you like, what's wrong with you? There's nothing funny about it. Actually, it was very funny. You had to be there. It's that kind. So I find humor in everything, and I like to read humor. I like to, all the way back to Mark Twain when I was a kid. So I like that. And I like a certain amount of sarcasm and irreverence to the humor. Yeah.
Do you notice, with being a part of the suspense thriller world, just in general, but writing it, is humor also a reprieve for you to kind of lighten the mood?
Oh, sure.
Heavier?
Yeah. My earlier 2 series, the Samantha Cody and Dub Walker series, were both more straightforward thrillers. There was humor. Sam had a lot of humor. Dub had his little bit, but not like this. But I said I'd like to write some humor. So right now I have 2 series going: the Jake Longley series and the Kane Harper series. Now, Kane Harper is much darker and much more true thriller. Runs and guns and bad stuff happening all the time. But Jake is lighter, and even though bad things happen, he has, as you said, he has an odd take on things, and he internalizes it with some of his internal dialogue, that he sees the world a little bit differently than everybody else, but he sees it through the lens of humor. That, this is actually funny. I mean, I realize, somebody might die here, but there is this element.
So he is a professional baseball player.
Retired, yes.
Do you love baseball? Are you a fan yourself?
I played baseball growing up my whole life. I mean, I played a lot of baseball and was pretty good at it. But watching it now, no, I find it too much time. It's too
Mm.
slow. It's just too much time to watch a baseball game. So I couldn't tell you who's doing what. I barely knew who was in the World Series. I don't watch it anymore. I grew up listening to it on the radio, and then watching it on TV. But
Mhm.
because I'm old, I remember when your entertainment was radio.
Back when we had radio, and that's where we would catch
Exactly,
you.
exactly.
I was talking to my kids, a little bit about like we didn't have all of this Netflix where you could just pick a show. Like you had to just wait at a certain time on a certain day, and that's when your show would happen. And they just couldn't even believe that. Like,
No,
really?
we didn't even have a TV till I was 6 or 7 years old. We had an old Philco, cathedral radio that we listened to the Saturday morning stuff, and at night we'd listen to the Green Hornet and Gunsmoke and all that. That's what was available entertainment. There was no television.
Mhm.
Like I said, I'm old.
No, you're wise, DP, and you have
That's it.
stories.
That's it. The wisdom of old age, or something like that.
Mhm.
Unfortunately, you forget what it was. I used to know that, and I used to be smart. I can't remember.
It's like being a writer. You have to put your ideas down, or you
Mhm.
don't remember what that brilliant idea was, an hour before.
Exactly. Exactly.
When was the time, DP, that you personally struck out in your writing career?
Well, it was, God, it's got to be 25 years ago. I always said that I had these stories I wanted to tell because I read a lot. I always read a lot, all the way through after the first 2 years of medical school, where you don't have time to even go to the bathroom or get something to eat because you're studying all the time. But I always took the month of August off every year, and I wouldn't read the medical journals. I would read 5 or 6 novels, and I did that every year. And because I missed the novel reading, and I started, when I was 13, 14 years old, and so I wanted to keep that going because I enjoyed it. So I had these stories I wanted to tell, and I always said I would do them when I retired. But I didn't see retirement. In fact, I'm still not retired. I didn't see retirement on the horizon. So about 25 years ago, I said, if not now, when? And so I took some classes at University of California, Irvine, great writing program in their extension night program, and then joined a couple of writers groups and just started writing. And it's harder. It's harder than telling a story. In the South, you have to be able to tell a story. They won't feed you. And I grew up being able to tell a story, and not everybody I knew could tell a story. But putting it on paper is a different animal.
Mhm.
It's a different animal.
When you sit down to write, do you have an idea before you start writing, or do you just let it pour out whatever you're feeling in that moment and show up to what that is?
Well, obviously, when you're in the novel, you kind of know where you're going. But really before the Dub book, I mean, before the Jake books, I was an outliner. I outlined everything because they were a lot of them. The Dub Walker series had a lot of forensic science and police procedure in it, and the Sam books had some and all that. And I guess I wasn't confident that I understood the story, you know, as you early on. But I think that what I found is I'd get about 3/4 of the way through the outline and I'd get bored with it. Okay, I'm done with this. I know how it's going to end. I don't know the details yet, but let's get started. Let's go back and start writing chapter 1. And I invariably did that. But with the Jake books, when I started Deep Six, which was the first one, I had a vague idea who Jake was going to be. Uh, I didn't really know any of the other characters that much. I kind of had a inkling that I was going to have these kinds of characters there, but I wasn't sure. But I didn't really know who Jake was, except I wanted to be a doofus. I wanted to be an ex-baseball player, and I wanted him not to be doing something he didn't want to be doing, and that was surveilling a house for his dad in the middle of the night. So I had one scene in mind, and that's it. And I said, well, I need to sit down and outline this. And I said, no, write this scene and see what happens. And the next scene, and the next scene, and the next thing you know, you're 40,000 words into it and you haven't outlined yet. And it just took on a life of its own. And all the plot stuff, all the good, the bad, the ugly, the good. I didn't know who the bad guys were. I didn't know who was going to die. I didn't know what the end was going to be. I didn't know how the stars were going to line up. I just started writing, and it all came together piece by piece by piece. And so all the books I've written that way. I don't outline. I'm working on the next one right now, and that's I'm about 20,000 words into it, and it's the same way. I'm just writing, and it's going very well. I know where it's going to go, not completely, but I have a good idea, and it works.
Mm-hmm. You get that sense of wonder and curiosity as you're going along with your characters there.
Yeah, you're not locked in. You're not, and even when I made outlines, I'd get 30,000 words into it and say, well, no, I want to do this, I don't want to do that, and then I'd have to refix my outline. And I wasted time fixing them out. I said, well, yeah, it's just write it. You don't have to follow that anymore. It was just merely like a stop sign in Italy. It's merely a suggestion.
You're speaking my language. It took me a few years of outlining to the point where I finally allowed myself to just let go and trust that I could just let it be.
Yes. And I always tell, when I teach writing, I always tell students, especially early on, that they said, what do you wish you had learned earlier? And I said, well, I wish I had learned before I ever stroked the first key or put down the first pen, is I wish I had learned that trust your voice, that the voice is the single most important thing in telling a story. And I always tell them, all stories have been written. Your story's not going to be new. There's only two. Somebody comes, somebody leaves. That's it. Somebody comes into the character's life, turns it upside down, they got to fix it, or they go somewhere and get involved in something stranger in a strange land. Those are the only two stories there are. It's always that way. It's a droid, it's a shark, it's something that comes into the person's life that changes things. And so your story's already been written, but it hadn't been written by you. And when editors and agents say, I'm looking for something new, something fresh, something that speaks to me, what they're saying is they want to hear your voice. So get out of the way. It's fine to learn all the rules and all the stuff, but at the end of the day, it really doesn't matter that much in contemporary fiction. It really doesn't. Forget the 3-act structure, forget all that. Just tell the story and tell it like you want to tell it. And I wish I had learned that a whole lot earlier. Once you do learn that, your writing expands dramatically, and you cannot outline anymore. You can write by the seat of your pants, as they say. Yeah. But you got to find that. That's the single most important thing.
Absolutely. I'm a big fan of eateries, and you have a fun eatery in the OC with Charlie's Chili, which, by the way, my mouth was watering the whole time.
Oh, yeah.
Yes. Have you personally had a chili cheese omelet, DP?
Oh, yeah. And Nan loves them. Charlie's Chili is real. It's been there forever, as long as I can remember. I moved to Orange County in 1977, and it was there then. I'm sure. I remember going there right after I moved here. But it's right at the end of Newport Pier on Balboa Peninsula, they call it, in Newport Beach. And it's a divey thing with booths and all this stuff, and it hasn't changed in decades. And their most popular menu item is the chili cheese omelet. It's a little much for me, but I mean, I've had it before, but not in a long, long, long time. And then the Cannery is a real place. It's a fantastic place. Blue Water Grill, where Nicole's condos are, they really exist. Rothschild's restaurant that Jake and Nicole went to is probably the best restaurant in Orange County. It's there. The Ortega Highway, where the story takes place, also one of the most dangerous roads in the U.S. It's famous in Orange County. You can die on that road and they won't find you for months, because you can go off in a ravine and never be heard from again. So all these things are real, but then I also made up a bunch of stuff,
Yeah. So you read and write both fiction and also nonfiction, which we'll get to. What is the biggest difference that you notice between writing in both genres?
I always say they're exactly the same, only different. With nonfiction, you have to get your ducks in a row. You have to get all the research done that you're going to do. You have to get all of that compiled and organized, because fiction's messy, nonfiction's not messy. It's got to have a progression. It's got to have a logic sense to it. You got to put it together. And then once you do that, then you write it, and then you will use some of your writing skills to do what you want to do. A little more textbook fashion, but you still have poetic license as far as how you spin it. With fiction, do the research you need to do. If you decide you want to set it in X city, learn a little bit about that city, geographically and population wise and traffic and weather and stuff. But don't get deep in the weeds, because you can spend a month doing that and not accomplish anything. But you do the research as you go along. What do you need to know? What do you need? And I remember in a Dub book they stopped in Rome, Georgia, and they were going to this place to get some information, but they had some time to kill, and so they were going to go get some coffee, and they went to a Starbucks. And I just wrote it, and when I'm going back to like the second rewrite, and I'm going back through it, and I said, I'm sure they have a Starbucks in Rome, Georgia. I'm sure they do, because there's probably one on the moon, and there's one everywhere, And so I went and Googled it, and sure enough, there were several there. But so I could put it where I wanted, and it could, but you'd be stupid if you put something that's not there. And it was important. Like, no, they're not in that state. They're not there. Like, we can't get Bluebell ice cream out of Texas, which is like a crime against humanity.
Yes, it is.
And we're just getting our first Crackle Barrel, but it's a long way away from here. I love their vegetables.
So you're taking a day trip. That would be like your day trip. Like, let's hop in the car. We're doing it. We're going.
We're going to Cracker Barrel. That sounds like some of the characters in my book.
It's an adventure to go get food, DP, for sure. Yes. When you were finishing up writing this fifth book, what are some things that surprised you about Jake from the first to the fifth?
It just how he's a lot more clever than I thought he was, and that he thought he was, as the books evolved. He basically hasn't changed. He still would rather hang out with Nicole and Pancake and avoid Ray, but and he would still rather hang out at his bar and just do nothing. But at least when he gets drug into these things, he's starting to get a little bit better at it. He's starting to think a little bit more like Ray would want him to think, even though he often chastises himself for thinking that way. What's wrong with you? That kind of thing. Why did you come up with that? That's who cares? But so I think he's evolved, and he's become more skilled in the PI world that he is reluctant to be part of, out of necessity.
Yes. We're going to turn it to the inner child question segment. Oh no, DP says.
There's a lot of inner child here. There's a lot of us in here, actually. The whole classroom.
And there's one and one.
Yeah, exactly. You shut up. No, I'm talking now. You be quiet.
Pancake is the best friend of Jake in the OC. Who was your best friend growing up?
Well, there were four of us that hung around together all the time. I mean, we were the two ends and the two tackles on the football team, and we played ball together and grew up together from essentially the third grade on. And you saw one, you saw the others always. But the first of us that got together was Charlie, and Charlie and I grew up. We lived a block apart, and we grew up on the same street, and we played baseball and football together, and we took our BB guns up in the woods together, and all that stuff. And it just that would be it. And a dear friend and a great person.
Love friendships.
Yeah.
And
we still all communicate on almost a daily basis.
Okay, that's a high five, because when you can hear that you're all still communicating, that's something special.
Yeah, email changed all of that, because you drift apart. Two of them are still back in Huntsville. One of them lives up in Oregon. I live down here. But once email and all that came along, instantly, and yeah.
Yes. Do you ever did you ever do like pen pal letters? I don't know if I know that I did. I don't know if that was more of a girl thing or boys wrote letters or just like, let's just hang out and not do letters.
Yeah. I think guys just talk more and, rather than do that stuff. I couldn't write a letter to save my life. I can't write a letter. Hi, how are you? I'm fine. That's it. I'm out of things to say.
Email works really good for that then.
Yeah.
Hey, let's hang out.
Yeah. I'd much rather have a dialogue,
Yeah. What is the oddest food combo that you've liked and tried or you've just tried?
I'm not sure it's not a combo because we were pretty basic growing up. We had my mom's meatloaf, and we had fried green tomatoes, and we had squash, and we had turnip greens, and we had cornbread. It was pretty basic stuff. But I loved chicken gizzards growing up, fried chicken gizzards. And so whenever mom fried chicken, dad always got the livers. I got the gizzards. My sisters wouldn't touch either one. There's something about chicken gizzards. They're fantastic.
And you spoke my fried green tomato language too. Bless your mom. Oh man.
Yeah. Mom could make great fried green tomatoes. Yeah.
Now on chicken gizzards, was there a sauce that you
no
put in, or just eat
like
it?
she's frying the chicken, whatever she put it in and fried it in a cast iron skillet. She did the same thing with the gizzards, and they came out and you just gnaw on them. They were very chewy and very tough, but they were so good.
What's your favorite game that you still like to this day that you enjoyed as a kid?
Oh, football, college football. There's no other sport. I don't really pay attention. I watch pro football because it's there, but college football is what it's all about. And my friends all know during college football season, if you want to talk to me on Saturday, you know where I am. Don't call, don't email, don't text, just show up. I got food, I got drink, but I'm not going to entertain you. Just show up and watch football.
What's your favorite thing about playing football that you enjoyed the most?
I've often said that I've always said that you learn everything you need to know to get through life during recess of the third grade, because you learn how to conflicts, you learn how to work with people, you learn how to do team stuff and sports stuff and all that just during recess. And it's very important interaction because it's out of the classroom. You're in a confined area with all kinds of people, not necessarily your best friends, but all kinds of people. And you just learn how to interact with each other, and you learn how you're going to face problems and communications and relationships and all that. But I also said that everything I ever learned that got me through life, I learned in a field of 100 yards by 53 yards. Because the thing about, and I always say that if a guy plays football just 1 year, goes through spring training and plays one fall, he's different. And he's different than people that didn't do that. And he's different than he'll ever be in his life, because you learn individual success and failure. You learn team success and failure. You learn how to work with others. You learn how to coordinate things. You learn pain. You learn delivering pain. You learn so much during that time. And also you learn stamina and when you don't feel like it, when you're tired, when you're sweaty, when you're dehydrated, you keep going. Because why? The other 10 guys on the team are depending on you. And everybody feels that way. And that team cohesiveness is important. I played on teams that didn't win a game, and I've played on teams that were undefeated, and everything in between. But you learn everything you need to know on a football field to get through life. Perseverance. Keep putting one foot in front of the other. And it ain't easy.
I absolutely love that. So these are the links, and we'll put the links below of the OCs, what we've been talking about with DP LYLE today, his new release that just released a few months ago. Another one I'd recommend by DP is a forensics book, a guide for writers. This has everything and anything you can think of to help accuracy within the crime forensics setting. It helped me a lot writing my own book. So thank you, DP.
For
Awesome.
fictional purposes only.
And you got an amazing podcast that is on Authors on Air called The Crime Mischief as well. Check that out. You can find all of that at dplylemd.com. And before we end today, DP, you are a cardiologist. And since we're talking about matters of the heart, what is something that you can leave our listeners with on living a creative life?
Well, I think you gotta love what you do. If you don't enjoy the process of writing, you won't do it. And everybody wants to be successful. Everybody wants to be New York Times bestseller list. We all do. But if that's your goal, the odds of you making it are very remote. I always compare it to medicine. If people say, well, doctors, they drive Mercedes. Yeah, but that Mercedes is parked in the emergency room at 2:00 in the morning. And if you're not willing to get up and go out and do the work, and you're not willing to sit down and put words on a page, it doesn't matter what the goal is. You won't get there. You'll quit. You'll walk away. Because you got to love the process. You got to love that. And that's what it's all about. But that's pretty much the way life is. You put one foot in front of the other. Sometimes you got to go to the ground game, put on the backpack, put one foot in front of the other and go forward. There's so many obstacles in life, and that's how you get through them.
Thank you so much for being here with us today. It's been an honor chatting with you talking about Jake.
Jake, yes.
Yes. Go get the OC. And thank you all for joining us today. Meet us next time on Monday, back at 1:00 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. And remember, as you're going about your week, you are the hero in your own story. Every step that you take defines where you're going to end up going in your own journey. Take care and have a great rest of your week. Thank you, DP.
Thank you.